The agenda this week heard how women are rebalancing the gender gap in engineering, debated the wisdom of luring tech giants such as Amazon to the province, and considered the influence of the digital age on the global village. The Agenda's Week in Review begins on the road in Lindsay, Ontario, with a look at the shifting economic fortunes of its people and the surrounding region. This is one of three places around Ontario where it's happening, Hamilton, Brantford, Thunder Bay being the other two. One of the things we have heard is that the uptake on the program, the basic income pilot, hasn't been what the Government of Ontario thought it would be, mostly because the people who need it don't necessarily have addresses where, you can sign them up, or they don't necessarily, they're not on the internet where they would know about it. How much of those kinds of problems are you having here?
We're going to fix all that right here, Steve. All right. Okay. We're going to have an application made easy. And, I'm sure there are kinks rolling out any type of new social program, especially at this level. And, selfishly, we're kind of glad that Thunder Bay and Hamilton went first. So, some of the kinks get ironed out, some course corrections made, and before it comes to Lindsay. Applications haven't started here yet in Lindsay. That's important to know. To the ministry's credit, they have formed a bit of a sounding board here locally. And we have said we stand ready to help with that rollout and to make sure that everyone is aware of how to apply, but also that they will have the help they need and assistance to make an informed decision on what's best for them in terms of applying for basic income. We think that's key. And everything from clinics for sign up, so people can come and meet with a living, breathing person to get all the information to help them with their form, to going through the social services agencies.
Well, let me ask Zita about that. Do you think that there's enough awareness in this community that all of those who are eligible will in fact sign up so they can get good data on how well this thing will work?
Well, communication is always a huge problem, yep. A huge challenge, I should say. But some of the things that are coming out of the meetings that Mike is having, to me, is going to help that. And part of our role, for those that want this to succeed, is to make sure the message gets out. And as Mike said, they need to be well informed about what exactly they're getting into. And communication, yeah.
Now it's about 17,000, right? Basic income pilot for a single individual. What are they going to spend that money on?
So hopefully they're going to be able to, they won't have to make a choice of paying the rent or their utility bills, or paying the utility bills or food. Their children, when they go to school, will be able to, when there's a request from the school for supplies, that they're going to be able to fill that. I mean, I could go on and on of all the things that they're going to be able to spend that money on that they're not able to spend it on now. The whole aspect of my husband and I, we fostered teenage boys for a while, and when they first came to us, I wasn't getting any notices from the school. And they said, well, I never took it home because I knew we didn't have the money to do it. Huh. So those are the kinds of things that people will be able to spend it on. They'll be able to fix their cars when their car breaks down, and then they'll be able to make it to work, as opposed to not being able to work and getting fired because this is the fourth time this has happened. So, does that answer the question?
Sure does.
I just to jump in, I noticed that you talked about what will they spend it on, right? And we're really trying to get away from that kind of us and them. They'll spend the same, they'll spend it on the same thing as any of us would.
And they'll do it locally.
Right.
And most of this money, almost all the money that people of low income spend, they spend it locally.
So it gets recycled in the community.
Exactly. It's good for our local economy as well.
Right. They did some of the costing on this, and over the 3 years, it could easily be in excess of $50 million of new spending power, right here in our local economy. And that's going to have a tremendous impact for local businesses, both in Lindsay and in the broader Kawartha Lakes communities as well.
Well, to state the obvious, I know you don't like the us and they, but just for those who are eligible and will be signing up for this basic income, right, they're hardly going to be investing the money in the market.
Right.
Right. They're going to be spending it on
bread and butter, and stuff that their kids need. For example, we have a business in town that's going to apply because it's for all of us, and I think that's an important message to know as well. This, if successful, would be for every one of us who falls on hard times. How many paychecks are any of us away from needing a hand up, Steve? Especially in this precarious economy, and Roderick can speak to that. But the business owner that's going to apply, second to third year of operation, all her money is going into the business. And so, she has kids to feed as well. Those are some of the, things the money will be spent on.
Yeah, this is not a new Ontario Works program.
No.
I mean, there will be some people in Ontario Works who apply, but it's for all those people in uncertain jobs.
In our travels around the province of Ontario, we have discovered that one of the most unequal services we find is access to rapid internet, right? What's it like here?
Well, what I'll tell you, I'll speak as Warden of Haliburton County. I am one of 13 wardens of Eastern Ontario, and 25% of the people in this part of rural Ontario don't have appropriate wireless data connectivity. And as we're looking worldwide from 2015 to 2020, we're going to see an 8-fold increase in the demands. That by the end of 2018, without changes, 2/3 of the people will not have quality connectivity. And there's two technical parts. There's connectivity to hook up, and then there's bandwidth that we can, run the Netflix, or if it's to do with your business, that kind of connectivity. So we need to do something significant. Through EORN, Eastern Ontario Regional Network, we put a proposal forward in May to both the federal and provincial governments to a $299 million project to put a wireless network, at the same time to do a first responder safety network. By doing them at the same time, we'll save just under $50 million. But this is necessary for growth in rural Ontario, and I don't care what you're doing. It's analogous, I would say, that the railways at the foundations of the country, certainly the highway systems after the war, and for the next 50 years, that type of connectivity is absolutely required.
Denise, how good's the service here in your view?
I think in Lindsay we have very good service. We actually have some local providers that are working really hard to provide free Wi-Fi, especially at our waterfronts, in our libraries, those kinds of places.
High speed?
Close, getting there, I believe. That would be a good question for them to get down to the nitty-gritty of it. I think of some of our businesses that operate up off of Shadow Lake, for instance. I think of an engineering firm that's able to operate up there.
Where's that?
So that's up near Cobeconk. We started a Chamber of Commerce up there about 5 years ago. And there are a number of businesses, people who, they live on the lake and they do business in Toronto, and they're able to find a way, but I agree with Brent, there's definitely improvements to be made to have that quicker, high-speed internet so that more business could be done, so that businesses could enjoy this great lifestyle.
I have heard this, Bruce, wherever we have gone to every corner of the province, that if you don't provide rapid high-speed internet, first of all, you're not going to get young people, and you won't get people who want to be entrepreneurs and do business here, because it's an absolute necessity to do it. How good's the service where you are?
We have reasonable service at our cheese plant. I can't say it's the best, but it's reasonable. We live with it, because the step up to the best is, I think, a considerable cost for us to do. So we're sort of waiting out till they come to us.
How do you like his $299 million idea to get this place wired up a little better?
He's absolutely right. It is the railway, it is the highway, it is the future.
And we're not even talking autonomous vehicles yet. Most people don't have intelligent appliances in their house, whatever. Like, if you look at the hard numbers for the next 5 or 10 years, we're playing from behind. I'd say at a minimum, it's a start. And I think that in areas where it doesn't exist, we're going to create have and have not regions. And I agree with the statement from the CRTC in December of 2016 that it should be viewed as a right. And there were some technical thresholds, 50 down and 10 up, whatever by...
Sorry, what does that mean?
The rate of speed, 50 megabytes down and 10 megabytes up,
Gotcha.
Which somebody in the city may laugh at those numbers, but in rural Ontario, where there are people that are still in DSL, what it means is you'll have functionality for just the normal apps that most of us use on a daily basis.
Kent, how do you see it?
When I test my internet, we're about 10 down, 2 up type of thing, and that's high speed. That's the actual high speed for this location, or for this region.
Is that good enough?
For today, but from what he's saying, I don't think it's going to be enough in the future.
Got it. Okay, we got 5 minutes.
We offer high speed now in Bobcaygeon, in the museum at the Locks has it for the first time this year. So we are making small steps toward providing it for everybody. I find in the rural regions that a lot of people connect through satellite. Is that something that's you're finding at your end, or?
It doesn't work at a level today to run any normal applications, whatever. It worked for a few years, but it's certainly the demands on modern mobile devices today are beyond that.
Sarah, I want to get from you a sense of how far, because we know that business, cities, states, countries, they're all throwing big incentives at Amazon to come here. And I'm wondering, in your view, how much of that should we engage in? Tax abatements, tax holidays, whatever these special incentives might be to get them to come here.
I think that's a really important question to be asking ourselves. I think obviously it would be a huge win on a lot of different fronts, as we've been hearing, to have Amazon locate in Toronto, in Ontario. But I think we have to be really cautious about not being willing to do anything to get them to come here. I think we need to be hard-headed in evaluating the costs and the benefits, not just for Amazon, but for the province and for the city. I think there's a danger that governments and others in entering these kinds of negotiations might feel that they need to roll out the red carpet and put together a big incentive package that's attractive. And I think on one hand, we shouldn't underrate ourselves. I think Toronto is very attractive. I think Canada is very attractive, not least because the political context here is more stable and predictable than it is currently in the US, and because of the deep talent pools that we've been discussing. But I think if we start to throw tax incentives or bend the rules in different ways to make the deal more attractive to Amazon, the costs could start to outweigh the benefits, and I think we should be very well aware of that.
Ali, you on that?
Well, that's what I think is the most interesting part of this, right? The biggest change I think has happened in our tech community and as a city over the last 5 years is we've gone from being the second best place to build a company to we are now a global player. We're the best place. We shouldn't have to participate in bids where we have to show what we'll do for them to come here. I think we could turn this completely around and say, this is the best place to build tech companies. What will you do for us, and how will you make our community a better place for everyone? Because we want to bring in participants that will contribute, not just have them ask what we'll do for them.
I want to get Janet Ecker on this, because I am imagining you at you were a Minister of Finance in Ontario once upon a time, and I'm imagining you sitting at the cabinet table saying, okay, what as a government should we be prepared to offer in terms of subsidies, tax abatements, tax breaks, whatever, in order to get them to come here? What would be on your list?
Well, I think, first of all, we are never going to be able to do the kind of incentive game that some of the American cities do, right? I mean, we haven't been able to, or we haven't wanted to do that kind of game. And one of the reasons why, I mean, Sarah makes a good point about, what's the cost benefit of doing it. Secondly, if you give them a 5-year break, what happens at the end of the 5 years? Because, jobs that can easily move because of that can easily move because of that. So obviously the federal and provincial governments will make a decision about what they think. But as far as we know at this point, one of the reasons we're on the list is because we've got a competitive business cost value proposition. So, Jim is right, the quality of life things are very important for the talent they want, but so is the fact that we have a very good cost competitive, on the business costs. The ease of doing business. We've been ranked very high as a tech startup place to be. So we've already got that value proposition, which many regions don't have. Secondly, we've got this wonderful thing called the SHRED tax credits, which have been around since the 1940s. What
are they?
And well, what it is basically it helps to offset technology job cost, research and new jobs. So, and it's a benefit that any company, that can qualify can get. And so it's very attractive to new investors here. And it's not something that ends in 5 years, and it's not a special bribe or anything like that. So we've already got a series of supports, quality healthcare, quality education. I mean, like there's just a long list. So we don't necessarily have to play that game.
Whose Global Village? What does that refer to?
Well, in the 1960s, our good old fellow Toronto resident, Marshall McLuhan, had made the point that he thought the world would turn into a global village. So he was talking about and essentially prophesizing the internet, an electronic technology that would instantaneously communicate us all over the world, independent of where we were. So the idea was that would turn the globe into a village where we would all be connected, we would get to know one another, we could connect instantaneously. So that was the idea of a village, right? The idea of a village is one where everybody knows one another. There's an intimacy of connection.
But now you're asking whose it is.
Exactly. And my argument in the book is this is essentially, it's incredible how we have a world with about 4 billion people online, 4 to 5 billion people online, but the technologies that dominate that connectivity come from a very, very small part of the world. Actually, the same part of the world that I'm from and that I saw firsthand. And I'm talking about Silicon Valley and specifically the West Coast of the United States.
Well, you're taking quite a sort of counter the conventional wisdom view on this because, of course, I think most people thought that the internet and social media and a wired world would certainly level the playing field and make us all much more connected. But you're expressing fears that this could make the world much more undemocratic and unlevel. How come? Where do those fears come from?
Almost every empirical study, research study I've looked at actually shows that while the internet is not the cause of inequality, it actually amplifies inequality. It takes our existing inequalities and extends them and increases them. And the reason why are two major reasons. One is the platforms, the technologies that actually shape our experience of connecting and communicating with one another are dominated by black boxes that come out of Silicon Valley. So the vast majority of the money and power that is accrued through those transactions are actually accrued by investors and CEOs and engineers, of which there are very few in these companies. But the second reason is if you're wealthier or more powerful, you tend to have the skills already to best exploit the technology, right? So you can see how someone, for example, who might have some money, say, you know, I was wealthy and you were poor, or you were wealthy and I was poor, your wealth would actually allow you to use the internet, for example, to make large-scale investments, right? And you could actually use the internet to your advantage disproportionately more than I would be able to. So these are two major ways in which inequality is extended economically. Politically, we see the same story, and culturally, because these technologies are dominated by the West Coast of the United States and the ideologies and the belief systems of mainly, to be honest, white males.
There are still these implicit associations, I would call them, that are prevalent throughout our entire society where they associate a man being an engineer. And both men do have these implicit associations, but women do as well. And so, as Amy said, I think it is a little bit more subtle now. But for example, in a first year, if a woman gets a co-op job, right away the man will say, oh, I guess you're the diversity hire. So he can't really believe that she may be equally capable technically, or even better than he might be because of these implicit associations.
Amy, you find that?
I find that, yes. And it's something which surprises me to this day. I had this excellent mentor during my graduate work at MIT, and she told me exactly the same thing. Someone who I look up to this day and model myself after, and she, you know, even she said that people told her that she only was where she was because of the fact that she was a woman.
Veronica, you work in a mine now, right?
Yeah.
How many other women in the mine with you?
Surprisingly, at Hemlo, there's a lot. Barrick's been doing a really big push on this, and there's a lot of women, like our general manager's a woman. My current boss, who's chief metallurgist, is a woman. So at Barrick and at Hemlo, I haven't felt it as much, but because it's just been able for me to flourish. I mean, it's almost not unique that I'm a woman in engineering at Hemlo, which has been an amazing experience. But I will agree with Amy and Mary, you know, in school, if you're the girl, you're normally doing the formatting. That's always the big, you know, push, and you kind of have to break through that and really ask for that technical work sometimes in group projects. So I think it's still there, but it's unconscious, and it's unconscious both to the women and the men in the group. You don't even realize it, and you end up in these type of roles.
Mary, I need to ask you about one of the most appalling anniversaries in Canadian history, the École Polytechnique, when female engineering students, 14 of them, were killed in Quebec. And I wonder what did that do to you and for you?
Well, it really touched me personally, because I'd grown up in Montreal and went to McGill. And it was 2 years after I graduated, so these were many of my colleagues. And in fact, my mother, who was a professor at McGill, taught one of the brothers of one of the women that was murdered. So, but it really, I guess, again, at that time, we didn't have many programs for women in engineering. And I think for me, it made me think about, for the first time, I'm a woman in engineering, and this person targeted these women because they were women in engineering. So it kind of galvanized me to try and do something about it. And I think for the engineering profession in Canada, and not even just Canada, but around the world, it actually, for the very first time, they paused to think about what is the experience like for women in engineering. So it led to a large report being done and the beginnings of women in engineering committees around the country and outreach programs and things like that. So it really was a very, very tragic event, but out of it, I think some very, very important positive steps were taken around the engineering profession and equity and inclusivity.
What did you resolve to do yourself?
I resolved to get more women into engineering, so.
How's
for
that going?
every woman that was murdered, to get another 1,000 in.
How's that going, your efforts?
Well, it's going very well, and that's part of the reason that I became the chair of the Ontario Network of Women in Engineering, and this is an organization that links together all the schools and faculties of applied science and engineering across the province of Ontario with a common mandate to look at women in engineering to get more young girls going into engineering. So this organization has been around for about 12 years, and over that time, we've been able to triple the number of women that are applying into engineering schools in Ontario. So it's been very, very successful.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, October 6th, 2017. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety on our website, that's tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream on our Periscope page at periscope.tv/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.